Hello and welcome to Movies and Tea. I'm your host, Ozel Jones, and joining me, of course, is my co-host, Miss Kimelo.
Hello.
Tonight we continue our re-evaluation of the films of Hayao Miyazaki as we look at the 10th film from Studio Ghibli, Princess Mononoke, released in 1997. A film itself set in the late Muromachi period of Japan, so approximately about 1336 to 1573. As a young Imache prince named Ashitaka finds himself caught in the struggle between the gods of the forest and the humans which consume its resources, while trying to find a cure for his cursed arm. Princess Mononoke marked a vast departure, really, in terms of both style and tone, especially after the whimsical nature of the likes of Kiki's Delivery Service, Castle in the Sky, and certainly My Neighbor Totoro. Here we are presented with a much darker vision from Miyazaki, as it's a vision which includes bloody battles, warring gods, and demonic presences, to name just a few of the delights contained with it. It's also a film that was also produced by Disney, who, due to their contract of no cuts, meant that it's often deemed as they didn't actually know what they were getting, and certainly no doubt hoping for something more whimsical than the film that they got. But certainly the film itself has gone on to become an important work, especially in terms of animation, and certainly it's that legacy that we will be looking at tonight. But Kim, I mean, this was a first time watch for yourself. This is probably one of my favourite of the Studio Ghibli movies, and a film that I've seen many times before, so I'm very interested to obviously see what you thought of it, obviously coming to it as a first time viewing.
Because of the themes is revolving around environment and that sort of thing, I think the closest I felt like it was kind of like a buffed up version of Nausicaa. You know, Nausicaa is huge for me because I grew up watching that as one of the many films that rotated around the cousins, you know, who liked Miyazaki. To me, it just like, I like the angle that it took. I think the visuals are really nice, and the whole story is very, I feel like a lot of the plot points are very similar to Nausicaa and the themes and all that stuff, but I don't know, maybe it was just because it was so long. I felt like it was kind of a bit like long in the first half. I still liked it. I thought it was, you know, it had like cute little forest spirit, cute creatures. You can't call it a forest spirit because the forest spirit is actually something else. There is a lot going on, though. There's like, you know, there's curses, and it is very supernatural compared to, say, Nausicaa, right? There's a definite fantasy element to it, spirits, and a very dark angle too. You know, it's weird that Disney is part of this because they definitely didn't know what they were getting. Because, you know, there was one shot I remembered where I was watching, and I was all of a sudden, what is that? Ashitaka was shooting his arrow at some warrior or something, yep, and his head pops off. It was so funny. I was watching, I was like, oh.
Yeah, over here in the UK, the scene they most commonly like to highlight at this point with is a scene where, again, he shoots the arrow and it takes the guy's arms off. And it's funny when they sometimes show it, they cut out these violent bits of the films. It's always fun when you get a chance to watch the uncut version, like on Netflix, and you see like some of the more gory elements of this. And I mean, it's not like hosepipe blood or anything like that. These are just like missing limbs, and you see a battle sequence later in the film between the residents of Irontown and the local one of the samurai clans, and they fire the weapons at them, and you see like a bunch of samurai sitting like missing limbs and things as they're crawling back up the hill. So it was interesting to see Miyazaki like obviously branch out, and certainly he has done darker elements in his films before. I mean, when we look at the Castle of Cagliostro, we have a villain there as well as several of his henchmen who get crushed in the clock tower. So it's not that Miyazaki cannot go dark. I mean, also we look at Castle in the Sky, and we've got the big villain there dropping all his henchmen out of the sky as well. So I think it's always surprising when he goes dark, and I think with this one is one of those rare films in his filmography where he just goes really sort of dark there, but it's very justifiable with the story he's choosing to tell. But it's interesting as well, you obviously bring up Nausicaa, because here Miyazaki drew inspiration for many of the same landscapes that inspired that film. So, like the mountains, Sharakumi Sanchi, and the ancient forests of Yakushima, which is over in Kyushu. So a lot of those sort of ancient forests is what he drew as the inspiration here. And I think when it came to like Princess Mononoke, it's one of the more richer worlds, where the other films have got like these sort of interesting backgrounds to them. This is one of the few ones where the actual setting is as important as the characters who inhabit it, and more so when you've got this division of essentially two tribes. You've got the humans, who are obviously representative of like industry, who live in Irontown. Itself is like it's inspired by John Ford's westerns, and Miyazaki wanting to create this sort of like tight-knit frontier town, and as such he populates it with a bunch of outcast characters and oppressed minorities who rarely appeared in Japanese cinema. And you see this with the fact that the women who work in the pumping the bellows are all former prostitutes whose contracts have been brought out. The weaponsmiths are all lepers, and you've got all these oxen farmers who handle a lot of like moving of the product. So it's a really interesting location in that respect. And then when we look at the surrounding woodlands, and we've got like the boar tribes, and you've got the wolf tribe, in particular, who San, who is the so-called Princess Mononoke of the film, here voiced by Claire Danes, is this girl who's been raised by the wolves, in particular the giant wolf god voiced by Gillian Anderson. And it's great when you start getting into this, and when Ashitaka starts like meeting more of these tribes. Like you've got the ape tribe who are busy trying to regrow the forest that's been knocked down by the residents of Irontown because they're trying to get at the ore. So that at night they're planting trees, and they're shown as these almost like shadowy creatures. And then you've got like the guardian of the forest, who's just takes on either like this giant form at night, or takes on a form like a deer during the day. So there's all these really interesting sort of fantastical elements, and it sort of like takes it up the notch that we saw with like My Neighbor Totoro. I mean, when they obviously mentioned like the forest spirits, were you upset the fact that it wasn't just another giant Totoro?
No. I mean, this is not the same thing, you know. That it's a different type of story in general. This one you're, you know, it is very, I do like the design of the spirit itself, the deer, and how it shifts into like a night walker, and it's very, very creative, right down to, you know, like the cute little bobbly head things. I forgot the name of them. But, you know, like, I think that aside from the spirits itself, I think while, you know, like, I think the setting, you really have a really good point, is that the setting is a really strong foundation. And I think in most of the films, other than possibly Nausicaa and maybe Castle in the Sky partially, the setting has never been that much character. Whereas in this one, the setting is such a big contributing factor, because obviously it's about environment. And the world that it lives in is so important. So they add so many more elements to it. Because even if you think about, when you think about Nausicaa, it was such a smaller scope when you talk about the world itself. Because, yeah, the world is dying. So there's nothing left of it at that point. And you only have these, like, giant, like, beetle insect things. And different insects that you can see fly around. And certain little creatures, obviously. But they're not focused completely, like, the environment itself has this character, but it's not quite as detailed as here, where there is a world where there are, you know, gods, and there are demons, and there are, you know, all these type of, it's like a good and evil world. And you have the humans, which are, when you look at the humans, you look mostly at Irontown and the Lady Eboshi, who runs the Irontown, and she has such a defining character in the sense that you look at her and the way she acts is, yeah, she does good because she's trying to create a space by, using outcasts of the society. But at the same time, her goal is so skewed that it's hard to see her like a good person, with what she's trying to create and trying to, really, I don't know, take over nature itself. And that kind of blinds her. So she creates this, she builds an ally with, I forgot what the tribe is that they're with, and to go to war. And basically, like the samurai, whatever samurai tribe is there, I forgot. And for run by Lord Asano, I don't remember what it is. And then
you talk about Jukobo's tribe.
Yes. And yeah, so basically, the tribe there, like when she does the alliance at the end, it's what breaks everything apart for the big finale. I don't know. I think there's so much depth to these characters as much as the setting, and it justifies itself that it does need that runtime in order to create all of these characters. So then they have a certain angle. If there was anything that I think in terms of character structure that I thought was a bit ridiculous, was I kind of didn't really like that they really were trying to create this, like, I don't know, almost like a romantic connection between Ashitaka and San. It almost felt that way at the end when they were going through the dialogue. And I don't know if that was supposed to be how it was interpreted or they had just like a deep friendship. Because, they never really like explicitly say these things.
Yeah, I mean, certainly they do. He does have the strong feeling for her because he obviously gives her the pendant. And they have like this strong connection, but at the same time, both are sort of torn between their duties by the end of the film. As obviously, Ashitaka wants to help the residents of Irontown rebuild again, but this time in a more sort of like way that is that's not so destructive to the surrounding environment, and at the same time that San is wanting to help the forces of nature, and sort of like both have taken their sides, and they accept the fact that at this moment they're not destined to be together because there's work to be done on both sides, and that they know that at some point in the future that they will meet. But it's the sort of Western ending that the ending we don't get with Western cinema, where you have the love interest there, and they both just put their duty before anything else. So
yeah,
but no, it's more suggested than it, like a lot of romance in Miyazaki movies. It's all very suggested.
Yeah, I mean, they always have like strong connections, and with a lot of the pairings that you have, even like when we go into Spirited Away soon, then it's basically you see the same kind of things with the two characters as well. But I mean, it is an interesting type of relationship that they have, because obviously San is human, but she was raised by wolves, and the circumstances of how she was taken in also comes into effect as to what creates her character to have this alliance with the creatures in the forests and nature more than with humans themselves.
Oh yeah, she very openly states that she hates humankind. So she sees herself as very much being the same as the wolves that she runs with. And it's great when you look at the visual of her character, the fact that she has the wolf pelt, and she has like and the way that she moves. Yeah. It's almost like on all fours, the way she sort of skitters around with like a knife blade, and her movements are so great throughout the film, whether she's like riding on the back of the giant wolves, or when she's sort of like moving through the rooftops of Irontown. Even when the sort of like that initial sort of showdown that she has with Lady Eboshi, the movements and like the amount of detail in that background and the scenery is just so fantastic. It's because the whole background isn't static; it's moving with them because they form a circle around these two fighters whose movements are intricate enough as they are. Because obviously, Stan is fighting with a dagger, Lady Eboshi is fighting with a sword, and there's a lot of intricate, sort of quickly paced movements with the two fighting styles there. Then you've got the villagers of the town who surround them, and they're moving constantly as the battle goes back and forth to the side. So the level of detail is just really fascinating when you look at it, and when you see like the explosions and the rooftops from when they're not trying to knock her off the roof. These aren't sort of like simple sort of explosions here. There's a lot of detail. You see all the little fragments of the roof tiles and how the wood splinters in particular is, and it's just that level of animation that you don't really see now, especially when we look at the fact that everything was CGI. Everything seems very sort of clean and blocky, whereas with this hand-drawn style, it's got all the, and especially with this, you see all those little minute sort of details, and it's really putting it into that higher category of animation that we see with the likes of Akira and Ghost in the Shell, and even to an extent perhaps like things like Wings of Honor is, where the detail is so intricate. Is not just the surface details with like the characters and the background is either like static or just sort of like more of a blur to it. Everything's just being designed to look as if it could be shot as a live action film. So
when you look at the just like design of the wolf and the expressions as this talking and whatnot, you can really see like even where the face will change, or the features will kind of change with the different expressions that they have. And then I mean, even when we talk about like the little kodamas, they're so, it's like you see them like when they're like a group, like every single kodama looks different. Some have like 3 little dots, some have 1 dot, and all of them have different expressions, and the shapes of the circles are different. And then when they run, they even have like little butts, you know? It's so adorable. I was looking at it, I was like, oh my god, they have little butts.
I know the fact that their standing stances, that they constantly turn their head to the side and then they click back and forth and they let a little rattle. And they're not uniform in how they do this, so they're all going at different times to create this sort of rattle. But yeah, they kind of like take the presence of like the soot sprites, so the little cute little spirits here, and it's when with the fact that when the forest god sort of like goes rogue at the end, and as they say, I mean, it can give life and it can take life away. So when you've got them all like falling out of the trees when they're all dead and stuff, it's like, oh no.
Yeah.
I was very surprised by the violence in this movie. And I mean, it's right from the start of the movie. The fact we got demons here, which are sort of like a swirling mass of like worms that embody them, and you see when we have that initial sort of demon attack on Ashitaka's village, and it's like you see the spindly spider legs of this demon, and as it sort of like peels back, you see that it's actually this giant boar that's been consumed by his hate, because in this world, that when you're consumed by the hate, that the demon form sort of takes over, and it takes form this like massive writhing sort of like worms as you that sort of like just destroy everything. So we see this happen again with the leader of the boar clan, who's sort of like this giant blind boar.
I mean, I can't remember. I feel like that type of like using the worms to invade was part of something else. I remember there was something else where the worms were the consuming forms. I can't remember what it is. Maybe it was... Oh, Howl's Moving Castle had that, I think. Okay. But it wasn't like a massive amount of worms. It was just like one little worm or something like that. Yeah, it was one little part. I can't remember exactly what it was. But I remember it as something similar like that. Or maybe I had seen a snippet of this film and I forgot. I don't know. But it is like, it's very, very creepy, because especially near the end, when you have that like big that big finale type of thing, when the worms consume the boar, and and then it starts consuming San as well, and you just see this big mess, and it's kind of very scary and as you're watching this, because not only is it like worms and that sort of thing is kind of considered creepy, but at the same time, like, you have a bunch of them just wriggling around, and there's no like known cures to how they can break this away, because obviously we have Ashitaka, who at the beginning we already know was cursed. So his, the expectation is that, if he doesn't find a cure for it, he's going to die. He's going to get consumed by it and then die. So, as you're watching this, you're just kind of like, oh no, what's going on? What's going to happen to them? Because, obviously they're the good characters, and then they're kind of being consumed by this character who's consumed by hate and can't really control what he's doing either.
Yeah, we see moments where it takes over his body, and other times where it sort of like gives him great sort of strength. It forms these like spectral worms around him. And sometimes they take the form of snakes as well, because they have little mouths.
Yeah.
And then if you think, oh, that's pretty bad, and then we get to the end, and you got Jigo, who's basically convinces Eboshi to help him destroy the forest spirit, as he believes that the head of the forest spirit will give the emperor immortality. Yeah. And it's all that happens really is just that everything just goes into this horrible slimy meltdown, which is just even more horrific. So it just constantly surprises me when you have like a dark moment from a Miyazaki movie, especially, that they just always come out of nowhere. You think you're like so on the level, you think you know where everything is, and then suddenly it's like everything goes to hell, like as is the case with the forest spirit, whose oozing body is now trying to find his head, and it's just like killing everything in its path. It just becomes this like highly toxic slime. So it kind of reminded me of do you remember in Hellboy 2 with the forest sprite? Right. That's what it reminds me of in many ways, because when it subsides, when it gets his head back, and like all the grass sort of reconsumes everything again. So
yeah, the thing is, for Miyazaki movies, when you think about it a little bit, sometimes you feel, at least for me, I feel like there's a lot of animated elements or sequences that kind of overlap to the other films. I don't know, like, obviously character design, a lot of them you can really see where they were before, or like a similar design appears as another character in another film of his, obviously. But I don't know, for this one, maybe it was like the whole like scene where you have like the whole slime melting and stuff like that. It almost feels like we saw that in Howl's Moving Castle had a similar scene. And then at the same time, you also, I think, Spirited Away, when, the big spirit.
Oh, the slime spirit, yeah.
Yeah, the spirit there comes in, and you see all this like traces and stuff like that. And obviously we're going to talk about that. I think that's like the next movie. So we'll talk about more there. But like there's a lot of elements, and especially with the animated, the sort of like animation that he does for it, it kind of, the details of that gets carried into, I don't know, the next project that, maybe it kind of brings in a new, like, how to incorporate it into something, or maybe something that he particularly liked or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, we've certainly seen this a few times now with like character designs that carry over, they get evolved, and we saw, I think the soot sprites are one of the most obvious examples of this, the fact that they appear in Totoro, and then we see them again in the Spirit Bathhouse in Spirited Away. And I find that a lot of characters voiced by John DiMaggio. In this case, he voices Gonza. Gonza himself, who's like the head, he's the chieftain of the village, and he's also infatuated with Eboshi. And every time he turns up, he always voices a very sort of similar character. Like, his character seems similar to like the voice of the head of the Sky Pirates in this one in particular. And then we got another of his voices where he in from like the Sky Pirates that in Porco Rosso, very similar to like the Sky Pirates that we saw in Laputa. So he always seems to voice very similar characters in these sort of films. So we sort of like the big burly shouty guys. But no, I like Gonza. I think he is one of the more underrated characters in this, and he has a lot of fun, quirky details, like the fact he can't swim. So he's Ashitaka just basically says, "We'll just walk along the bottom," which is just which he does, which is just really kind of charming. So
yeah. Well, I mean, talking about that, I think the voice cast here is also pretty good. I mean, I'm a big fan of Claire Danes. I just find her voice so unique.
Yeah.
And you can really like tell when she's doing voice acting because of that. And I really liked her doing San. I thought it was so good. And then obviously, the rest of the cast is still pretty strong. You have Eboshi by Minnie Driver, and then Ashitaka is by Billy Crudup. So there's much more than that, obviously. Billy Bob Thornton is also a character here, and Gillian Anderson we already mentioned before.
This is the thing. Gillian Anderson's voice is like, I don't know if she sort of phoned it in, well, literally, but it's so quiet compared to everyone else's voices. When you listen to the audio track, it's sort of like it's barely there. And then obviously Keith David is memorable as the blind boar, but I think Keith David you can place anyway. He's got a very distinctive, charming, deep voice tone to him. The only problem with Keith David is because ever since I watched Saw Requiem for a Dream, I can now forever associate him with the character Little John. So he, as nice a person as he is, I will always forever associate him as being Little John from Requiem for a Dream. So, and he's in so many things I like as well. Like he's like in The Thing, and he's in They Live, and he's done so many like great voice over works, but for some reason that character will always be associated with him. So but Billy Bob Thornton's really good in this. I wish he'd done more voice work in this, because I really like his character of Jukubo, and it's a character whose allegiance is it switches constantly, because he is a mercenary, really. I mean, but at the same time, he's a government spy, he's a ninja, he's kind of like a monk, and he's embodies almost that Sammo Hung style character, because we get to the end and you think that he's just this like fat little monk guy who's runs around on wooden platform shoes, and at the end he proves himself kind of handy in a fight. So the same way that we obviously see with like Sammo Hung's characters, where he's a little fat guy who can really handle himself. So
but Jigo's character is a little bit, you can kind of like, he's a bit of like a manipulative character, because there's so many sides to him, right? So is he the true bad guy in this because he misled Eboshi? Well, that's something that I was thinking
it's
about.
So hard to say who is like the definitive bad guy in this. I mean, obviously Eboshi would be the most obvious choice, but at the same time Eboshi has all these redeeming factors, such as like the fact that she has brought together all these sort of outcasts of society. Like, she saves the women from prostitution and puts them to work in the mill. She brings in the lepers and puts them to work designing the weapons for the residents, and her whole focus is on two things, really. It's one, on making the Irontown this industrial megastructure, and two, on the residents and their well-being and their safety. These are her only concerns. She doesn't care about the environmental damage that she's causing. She certainly doesn't care about the animals determined to move to like destroy Irontown, as she's constantly trying to find new ways to dispose of them.
Oh, well, I mean, in reality, she's just trying to protect her turf.
Exactly. Right? But, by the end of the film, we see that where she obviously has that sort of... she loses her arm because it gets bitten off by by the wolf god, that she has this sort of change of heart, and that she's going to turn Irontown into just a settlement rather than this industrial structure. So it's going to be more based around working around the environment. And to that extent, I mean, I guess that Jukubo would be the closest we have to a villain, but even then it's more just his goals are driven by his own personal gain. He's not trying to manipulate people as such. He's very sort of on the level with his intentions. And we have that great scene as well when he's sort of Ashitaka's there trying to buy the rice with the gold, and the woman thinks he's trying to rip it off, and he's sort of like, well, I'd be very happy to take this nugget off you. And then causes a mini riot when he points out how much more valuable gold is than coins. So it's a very morally blurred sort of line here. I mean, obviously the forest creatures, I mean, you assume to be good. So yeah, even when you the characters you would sort of assume to be the villainous sort of characters of the piece, they're not as villainous as in a traditional sort of sense. It's just they're doing what they think is right because it benefits them, but unfortunately, at the same time, it's more the impact they have on the environment, and that's one of the main themes of the film. Really, it's just this constant battle between industry and the environment, and we see this again with Pompoko, with the raccoons trying to push back against humanity, really encroaching in on their space. So they're constantly trying to push back with humanity, trying to develop the woodland area. So, did you have any favorite characters in this one, Kim?
I feel like I like all the characters relatively well, but nothing that is super standing out. I really like the character design of San.
Yeah.
But as a character, I feel like she still... There's something there that I'm not, I like everyone very well, but but nothing that is my favorite character, I think. I think that's where I'm at. Because, if it was talking about characters in a sense that, I had a really fun time watching the character, well, I'd say the Kodamas are super dope. They're my favorite element of the thing. But are they considered a character?
Yeah, they can be
a
character.
And then, when you talk about the Eboshi's women at the camp, oh my god, they are hilarious. they're one of the fun highlights of the film. They kind of break up this darkness and this war and the whole conflict that's going on. And it's a nice bit of fresh air when you see all these women seeing him and being all oh, he's a handsome guy, trying to get his attention. And it's very, very, it's a very fun element, much like the men there who come in and then it's what is it, Koraku or whatever, I think it was Koraku or someone else, and one of the husband character is just kind of he's kind of an idiot. And then you just listen to him, and the whole residents of Irontown is very fun. They're very funny people until they kind of blindly follow Eboshi for different reasons, I guess, because I guess they feel like they're indebted to her because they pulled them out of a tougher world.
Yeah, I mean, Eboshi, I think a lot of them, they see themselves in the debt to Eboshi, and at the same time, the forest animals are constantly sort of attacking them when they're just trying to carve out the life for themselves away from the warring samurai clans and everything else. That they part all their sort of interactions with the nature spirits around them are always these violent conflicts, such as the oxen trains constantly being attacked by the wolves, and you've got the monkeys the apes who are constantly trying to attack them as well. And I mean, at one point the apes want to eat Ashitaka, which is kind of dark. Just sort of but the fact that the apes are also just showing constantly in shadow, they're just these this shadowy mass, I thought was really interesting, as well the fact that they don't turn up to this sort of final battle. It's just really sort of like the boars and the wolf tribe who turn up for the big final battle. The apes are nowhere to be seen, which was interesting because you normally expect apes to be part of that sort of thing, but they're more sort of like in the background. They work by the cover of night, just planting trees.
Yeah, but I mean, what do you have a favorite character?
As I said before, I think I really love, but I like the boss guy who's sort of love for Eboshi. Where is he? Yeah, I like Gonza. I go back and forth because if we're talking about the forest creatures, San is still my favorite, and Gonza is sort of like the second. Ashitaka is so melancholy. I have no real concern. I think he's a great character, but at the same time, he's so melancholy. He's sort of like he just carries the weight of the world on him. It's like a Morrissey record in human form, and
well, you know, he's the main character. A lot of main characters in like Miyazaki's films are very like they have like this heavy duty on them, you know.
He does, and I mean, yes, he's obviously trying to protect his village, and he's got this really great look. I mean, with obviously his mask and he looks like a walking haystack, so that's pretty cool. But no, there's something I think it's when you look at this film, this is again something that one of the reasons I liked anime as a kid is because it fell into the same sort of tropes as like kung fu movies, and the fact that all the female characters were like super tough, and I've always gravitated towards like tough female characters, and in Princess Mononoke especially, the most badass characters in this are all female characters. So like San, Eboshi, the wolf, the Dean Anson's wolf god thing, they're all like tough female characters. Even like the ladies of Irontown, they're the ones who sort of like are the ones who are quick to arm. It's not like the guys are all like just the ones who run the ox train. They just deal with all the transporting of the merchandise. But when it comes to the female characters in this film, they're the ones who all get the job done. And you see this when you have like Sam versus Eboshi, like in that middle sort of portion of the film when she first attacks Irontown trying to take out the refinery.
I mean, if you think about it, I mean, San is possibly one of the toughest lady characters that Miyazaki has created in all of his films, I think. I mean, maybe second to Nausicaa.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just when you sort of like think about it, I mean, Nausicaa because Nausicaa is like the only other one that I can think of. I mean, every other sort of character that we sort of look at is more just they have skills, such as like Porco-Rosso's mechanic. She obviously like has her skills, and with the Puta Castle in the Sky, I mean.
She's
so she has the power to sort of like control the castle and everything. But with the certain other characters, San and Nausicaa, they're sort of like the ones who are able to handle themselves. But I don't think we see this with any of the other sort of characters. I mean, even with like Kiki. I mean, Kiki's skills are, witch based. She can fly a broom. She has a talking cat. Overwhelming goodness.
Yeah, like nothing that, because I think if you think about the scope of the film, this is probably one of the biggest scopes that he's done. Because the characters, like you said, like even when we talk about Ashitaka, he carries the weight of the world basically on his shoulders. He has to try and find a way to save nature and try to settle this conflict between human and nature, while also trying to get the other side, the nature side of things, the wolves, to accept the humans. And it's crazy because he has like this big mission. Obviously at the end it doesn't quite work out the way that he wants. He can't change everyone's view of things, but the little things that he's done through, the genuine actions of trying to mend everything really did make an effect, especially in the end when we were talking about it, where Eboshi kind of gets an enlightenment and she changes her idea of what she wants Irontown to be when she rebuilds it.
Definitely so. And with this one, you look at this one, it's that high fantasy that we don't really see in the other films. They're much smaller ideas, where this one has got like, it's almost like a Lord of the Rings sort of scale, but it's in it's a smaller location. But obviously Lord of the Rings has got the whole of Middle Earth to sort of stretch its vision across. With this one, it's just Irontown and the surrounding woodlands is the scope that it goes for, and everything that happens is what stumbles into this area. So, but at the same time, they're very sort of in-depth locations. There's multiple characters that inhabit these areas, and it just really pushes it up into that sort of higher fantasy level that we don't really see a lot of now. We don't get these big sort of fantastical fantasy visions. I mean, obviously you've got like Game of Thrones and you've got Lord of the Rings and things, but back when I was like growing up as a kid, and like especially in like the 80s and stuff, you had so much more of these like fantasy things like Neverending Story and Labyrinth and Dark Crystal, these high fantasy concepts that we just don't get to see anymore. And I think that's what I like so much about Princess Mononoke, is the fact that it's got this wonderful world and it's very self-contained, whereas the other films in Miyazaki's catalog, you can see that in many ways they could link up and be part of the same world. Like I could see Kiki exists in the same world as Totoro, and same as Spirited Away, and perhaps to an extent Castle in the Sky and Porco Rosso. I could see them all sort of like linking together, whereas Mononoke is just very much its own world. And we never got like a follow-up. There was no plans to follow this up at all. It was just sort of one and done vision that he had for this world. So, would you like to have seen a follow-up?
No,
okay,
I don't think so. I mean, like, where would you take the next follow-up, right? I think all the movies, when you think about a sequel, you need to think about where you want to take them after. And that's the problem with sequels, is that people force out sequels, and then it forces the story to take this angle, this direction that kind of ends up ruining the characters a lot of times. And that's like my biggest beef against really having sequels and the expansive amount of sequels that we have nowadays. Even when you think about remakes, like sometimes it seems so unnecessary.
Yeah, I mean, the only way that they could really go is to have some sort of outside threat, which would cause the residents of Irontown to team up with the forest sprites to unite against a bigger evil. That would be the only direction I could see. But at the same time, the way we leave the story, they've already sort of reached that sort of truce between the two, where they're going to sort of work side by side. The forest is going to rebuild itself, and the residents of Irontown are going to rebuild their side of things, and humanity is going to live with nature rather than have the two as opposing forces trying to wipe each other out. So
yeah, but I mean, if you were to do something like a sequel, I think the only thing would be like a little spin-off, like doing a short or something like that. Like for Neighbor Totoro, Miyazaki did a short called May and the Kitten Bus, and that's really fun because you get like the side story and stuff. I've never watched it, but I mean, I think that would be an interesting way to do it rather than having an entire movie, because I don't know. I think that the world itself is very, very nice the way it is, but I think that when you leave like the future of a location or something like how this film was left off to your own imagination, well, you can leave it in the sense that, you know, this imagination is a good one. You know, like things are heading in the right direction. The nature is rebuilding itself, you know. Irontown is going to be under, you know, better government, and they're not going to be, you know, trying to be against nature anymore. And you know, like there's still a connection between the two characters in their own world, creating what they're doing, being close to each other, but not really being, you know, not really being able to be together because, you know, obviously San has a hatred for humans. So
yeah, I know what you mean. I have to wonder, does Ashitaka's village wonder where he is at the end? Because if you watch the original Japanese cut, he's actually got the girl that's in the English version is marked as being his sister is actually marked as his bride to be in the Japanese version.
Oh, yeah, really?
And she's voiced by Tara Strong in the English version.
Okay.
I'm just now thinking of like how you can extend this one, just so I can find like a Awkwafina role. Maybe she could like play a wisecracking rabbit or something. And Jada Pinkett Smith also voices the leader of the Eboshi women as well.
Yeah.
That's all I got on this. So. I'm just like going through the cast here, and it's so tricky when you look at the casting of this, because you obviously have all the Japanese actors, and then hidden in the description of you got who did the English cast for it. So, but no, I've got nothing else to add on this one.
No.
Okay.
No, I'm done.
So that brings us to the end of tonight's episode. Thank you very much for listening. If you haven't already, please do hit the like and subscribe. But wherever you happen to listen to us, leave us a review. Let us know what you think of the show. It all helps raise the profile of the show. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. Come say hi to us there. And you can also check out our blog, which is moviesandteapodcast.wordpress.com, which has got our complete archive of episodes, as well as our Friday Film Club, where every Friday myself and Kim both pick a film to highlight. Sometimes it's a theme, sometimes it's not. It's a chance for us to talk about more of the films that we love. But Kim, where are we going to next?
Now we're going to 2001 with Spirited Away. I would arguably say the film that put Studio Ghibli into everyone's, Western world radar.
Yes, the film that won the animation Oscar, and certainly, as you said, if people didn't know who Studio Ghibli were before that film came out, they certainly did by the time it had came out. So, yes, it's going to be really interesting to look at that Pinocchio-esque tale of a young girl transported into the world of spirits. But obviously that is coming up on our next episode. But until then, thank you for listening. Thanks to my co-host Kim. And we'll be back next time to talk about Spirited Away. Until then, good night.